A man who has been married for over 10 years begins to notice strange changes in his wife's behavior. Her constant complaints about a lack of attention and romance seem absurd. After all, he puts effort into making her happy every single day. When a longtime friend, who is also a psychologist, suggests that his wife might be seeing someone else, he dismisses it as nonsense. She's been acting weird for a week, and it's bugging me. I was on the couch that night, thinking, what's her deal? Earlier, she got mad, saying, I need more attention, more flowers, more romance. I looked at her and said, but I've been bringing flowers almost every day, cooking dinners, taking you out. What's the problem? She frowned and shot back. It's all the same. It doesn't feel special. I shook my head, saying, this doesn't make sense. Feeling uneasy. The house was quiet, and I felt okay. The windows showing the yard. The clock hit 8 o'clock, and I stayed focused, doubt starting to creep in. I shifted on the cushion, and I kept calm, wondering what was up. The air felt heavy, and I moved on, thinking about what to do. I've been trying hard. That morning, I gave her some flowers and said, got these for you? She took them and mumbled, thanks, but didn't seem into it. I asked, you all right? And she shrugged, just tired of the routine. Later, I set up a candlelit dinner and told her, made your favorite tonight. She nodded and said, that's nice, but then stopped. I thought, what else can I do? Feeling frustrated. I added, she's not happy, the tension building. The kitchen was warm, and I felt steady, the windows showing the candles. The clock hit 9 o'clock, and I kept quiet, starting to suspect something. I finished setting up, and I stayed focused, doubt growing. She left the room, and I planned ahead, wondering what was next. The stove turned off, and I moved on, feeling resolved. I talked to my friend. That afternoon, I sat in her office, my psychologist friend of 10 years, and said, she's been off, complaining even though I've been doing a lot. I went on, flowers, dinners, outings. She says it's not enough. She listened, then leaned forward and said, I don't usually say this, but as your friend, she might be cheating and using this to justify it, making you the bad guy. I leaned back, surprised, and replied, I respect you and our friendship, but that sounds nuts. We've been married 10 years. She wouldn't do that. She nodded and said, it's normal to deny it, but you should watch her or check, I'm sure. I thought, that's a shock, feeling a bit relieved. I added, hard to believe, the tension picking up. The room was quiet, and I felt okay, the windows showing the street. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth starting to sink in. I stood up, and I kept calm, doubt lingering. The door closed, and I moved on, suspicion growing. I didn't buy it at first. That evening, driving home, I thought, 10 years, she wouldn't cheat. Her words stuck with me, and I said to myself, can't be true, shaking my head. I added, I know her, the tension holding. The car was quiet, and I felt steady, the windows showing the city. The clock showed 7 o'clock, and I kept quiet, truth a possibility. The engine ran smooth, and I stayed focused, doubt fading. I parked, and the keys jangled, and I planned ahead, an idea forming. The brake clicked, and I moved on, feeling more determined. The streetlights lit the way, and I kept going. She wasn't home. That night, I walked in, house empty, and thought, where's she at? The silence hit, and I said, I'll cook anyway, grabbing some pans. I added, one more try, the tension rising. The kitchen was dim, and I felt okay, the windows showing the yard. The clock hit 9 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth getting closer. The pan heated up, and I kept calm, doubt guiding me. The table was ready, and I moved on, suspicion clear. The smell spread, and I planned ahead, resolve strengthening. The clock ticked, and I waited, the idea set. She brushed it off. That moment, she walked in, saw the dinner, and rolled her eyes, saying, same old thing, can't you change it up? Then she added, I'm tired, going to bed, and walked off. I stared, thinking, unbelievable, and muttered, turn down again, feeling shocked. I asked, you sure you're okay? And she snapped, just leave me be, the tension building. I added, something's off, the unease growing. The house felt tense, and I felt steady, the windows showing her leave. The clock hit 10 o'clock, and I kept quiet, truth near. The sink dripped, and I stayed focused, doubt gone. The towel dried my hands, and I moved on, suspicion solid. The floor creaked, and I planned ahead, the the idea firm. I caught her awake. An hour later, I went into the bedroom, saw her on her phone, smiling, and thought, "What's that?" Her smile dropped when she saw me, and I said, "Why aren't you sleeping? You were so tired." She glared, snapping, "Stay out of it," tossing the phone and turning away. I muttered, "Hiding something," the anger building. I added, "Need to figure this out," the tension rising. The bed creaked, and I felt okay, the room still. The window showed the night sky, and I saw a clue, the life of shock. The clock at 11 o'clock, and I stayed focused. Truth a step, the silence stretched, and I moved on, the plan taking shape. I decided not to blow up over it. Just let it sit for now. I was in the kitchen that morning, making coffee, thinking, gotta play it cool. She walked in, saying, "Morning," like nothing happened, and I nodded, "Morning," keeping my voice steady. I thought, act normal, the tension building. I added, "Watch her," feeling uneasy. The room was quiet, and I felt okay, the window showing the yard. The clock at 8 o'clock, and I stayed focused, doubt hanging around. I stirred the coffee, and I kept calm, wondering what was up. The spoon clinked, and I moved on, the plan starting to form. I pretended to believe her. That afternoon, she mentioned needing space, saying, "I've been stressed," and I replied, "Sure, take it easy," forcing a smile. I thought, not buying it, the suspicion growing. I added, "Keep an eye out," the tension holding. The living room was warm, and I felt steady, the window showing the street. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I kept quiet, truth starting to nag. I flipped through a magazine, and I stayed focused, doubt getting stronger. The pages turned, and I planned ahead, an idea taking shape. The door opened, and I moved on, resolve building. I found something in the trash. That evening, I took the bag out, lifting the lid, and thought, "What's this?" I saw used contraceptives and froze, muttering, "No way," the shock hitting hard. I added, she lied, the anger starting. The kitchen felt tense, and I felt okay, the window showing the night. The clock showed 7 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth sinking in. I grabbed the bag, and I kept calm, doubt turning to certainty. The lid shut, and I moved on, suspicion solid. The back door clicked, and I planned ahead, thinking about next steps. The cool air hit, and I felt determined. I kept it to myself. That night, I washed my hands, thinking, not saying a word yet. She was in the other room, and I muttered, "Gotta think." The relief faint. I added, "Figure this out." The tension picking up. The bathroom was quiet, and I felt steady, the window showing the yard. The clock hit 10 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth clear now. I dried off, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The towel hung, and I moved on, suspicion firm. The water stopped, and I planned ahead, the plan forming. The light switched off, and I felt resolved. I knew I'd been fooled. The next morning, I sat with coffee, the trash memory fresh, and thought, she played me. The evidence stuck in my head, and I muttered, "Can't ignore it." The disbelief strong. I added, "Time to act," the tension rising. The kitchen was bright, and I felt okay, the windows showing the street. The clock hit 8 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth hitting home. I sipped the coffee, and I kept calm, doubt fading. The cup sat down, and I moved on, suspicion of fact. The chair creaked, and I planned ahead, the idea growing. The sun came in, and I felt steady. I threw it out quietly. That afternoon, I double-checked the trash was gone, thinking, no trace. She asked, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Just cleaning up, keeping it casual." I thought, she doesn't suspect, the relief growing. I added, "Stay smart," the tension holding. The garage was cool, and I felt okay, the windows showing the driveway. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth a guide. I tied the bag, and I kept calm, doubt a memory. The lid closed, and I moved on, suspicion clear. The door shut, and I planned ahead, the plan taking shape. The car beeped, and I felt determined. I started thinking ahead. That evening, I sat on the couch, mind racing, and thought, what now? The betrayal stung, and I muttered, gotta do something, the anger building. I added, smart move, the tension easing. The living room was quiet, and I felt steady, the windows showing the night. The clock showed 8 o'clock, and I stayed focused, true to path. I tapped my knee, and I kept calm, Doubt gone, the phone sat there, and I moved on, suspicion driving me. The cushions shifted, and I planned ahead, the idea firm. The house settled, and I ended the plan to start. I figured I'd keep things smooth and step up my game. I was in the kitchen that morning, grabbing some flowers, thinking, gotta show her I care. I handed them to her, saying, got these for you, and she took them, muttering, oh, thanks, with a small smile. I thought, keep it going, the tension easing. I added, winter over, feeling steady. The room was quiet, and I felt okay, the windows showing the yard. The clock hit 9 o'clock, and I stayed focused, doubt still there. I set them on the table, and I kept calm, wondering what's next. The vase sat there, and I moved on, the plan forming. I cooked for her. That afternoon, I started dinner, thinking, make it good. She walked in, and I said, I'm fixing your favorite tonight. And she nodded, that's nice. I asked, want to eat together? And she said, yes, sure, sounding a bit happier. I thought, she's buying it, the relief growing. I added, stay on track, the tension holding. The kitchen was warm, and I felt steady, the windows showing the street. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I kept quiet, suspicion lingering. I stirred the pot, and I stayed focused, doubt fading a bit. The spoon moved, and I planned ahead, the idea taking shape. The smell spread, and I moved on, resolve building. I talked about us. That evening, we sat down to eat, and I said, I really care about you. Let's make this work. She looked up, replying, I've missed this, her voice softer. I nodded, me too, let's keep it going. And she smiled, okay. I thought, she thinks it's better, the satisfaction picking up. I added, set the next move, the tension easing. The dining room was quiet, and I felt okay, the windows showing the night. The clock showed 7 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth close. I took a bite, and I kept calm, doubt of memory. The fork rested, and I moved on, suspicion clear. The table held steady, and I planned ahead, the plan unfolding. She perked up. That night, she lingered after dinner, saying, this was nice, and I replied, glad you liked it. She added, feels like old times, and I nodded, yeah, let's build on it. I thought, she's falling for it, the relief firm. I added, time to push, the tension building. The living room was warm, and I felt steady, the windows showing the yard. The clock hit 10 o'clock, and I kept quiet, truth to guide. I leaned back, and I stayed focused, doubt gone. The cushions shifted, and I moved on, suspicion of fact. The light stayed on, and I planned ahead, the idea growing. The door stayed shut, and I felt determined. I suggested a break. The next morning, I poured coffee, thinking, let's try this. I said, how about a break to recharge? And she brightened, that sounds great. I asked, want to set up? And she said, yes, please, surprise me. I thought, she's in, the satisfaction rising. I added, control it, the tension holding. The kitchen was bright, and I felt okay, the windows showing the street. The clock hit 8 o'clock, and I stayed focused, true to step. I sipped the coffee, and I kept calm, doubt a past. The cup sat down, and I moved on, suspicion clear. The chair creaked, and I planned ahead, the plan taking shape. The sun came in, and I felt resolved. I took charge. That afternoon, I started looking at options, thinking, I'll handle it. She asked, where are we going? And I said, it's a surprise. I've got it covered. She laughed, can't wait, and I nodded, you'll see. I thought, she trusts me, the relief growing. I added, keep it secret, the tension easing. The living room was quiet, and I felt steady, the windows showing the city. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I stayed focused, true to path. I typed on the laptop, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The screen lit up, and I moved on, suspicion driving me. The keys clicked, and I planned ahead, the idea firm. The chair shifted, and I ended the plan to start. The next day hit hard when she decided to leave. I was in the living room that morning, hearing her pack, thinking, what's she up to? She grabbed her bag, saying, I'm going, and I asked, where? She just shrugged, need some space. I thought, here it comes, the tension rising. I added, stay cool, feeling uneasy. The room was quiet, and I felt okay, the windows showing the yard. The clock hit 9 o'clock, and I stayed focused, doubt growing. I watched her go, and I kept calm, wondering what's next. The door clicked, and I moved on, the plan forming. She sent a text. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with her message. We need a 2-week break. I'll think it over. I read it thinking, I know what you're thinking about him. I muttered, figures, the suspicion picking up. I added, let her go, the tension holding. The kitchen was warm, and I felt steady, the window showing the street. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I kept quiet. Truth starting to click. I set the phone down, and I stayed focused, doubt turning solid. The table held steady, and I planned ahead, the idea taking shape. The chair creaked, and I moved on, resolve building. I went to my friend. That evening, I drove to her place, thinking, need to talk. I sat down, saying, she left, texted about a break, and I found stuff in the trash. She listened and smirked. I told you. I leaned back, replying, yeah, you were right. Feeling a bit off, I added, what now? The tension easing. Her office was quiet, and I felt okay, the windows showing the night. The clock showed 7 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth sinking in. I shifted in the chair, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The pen rolled, and I moved on, suspicion clear. The door stayed open, and I planned ahead, the plan unfolding. Her words stuck with me. That night I drove home, thinking she saw it coming. The text replayed, and I muttered, 2 weeks, huh? The relief faint. I added, gotta figure this out, the tension building. The car was quiet, and I felt steady, the windows showing the city. The clock hit 10 o'clock, and I kept quiet, truth a guide. The engine hummed, and I stayed focused, doubt a memory. The keys jangled, and I moved on, suspicion firm. The garage door shut, and I planned ahead, the idea growing. The lights switched on, and I felt determined. I started piecing it together. The next morning, I sat with coffee, thinking, she's out there. The break idea bugged me, and I muttered, probably with him, the anger rising. I added, stay smart, the tension holding. The kitchen was bright, and I felt okay, the windows showing the street. The clock hit 8 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth clear. I took a sip, and I kept calm, doubt faded. The cup sat down, and I moved on, suspicion of fact. The chair shifted, and I planned ahead, the plan taking shape. The sun came in, and I felt resolved. I talked more with my friend. That afternoon I called her, saying, she's gone for 2 weeks. She answered, told you, she's covering something. I said, yeah, the trash proved it, and she replied, keep watching. I thought, she's got a point, the relief growing. I added, next step, the tension easing. The living room was quiet, and I felt steady, the windows showing the yard. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I stayed focused, true to path. The phone rested, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The call ended, and I moved on, suspicion driving me. The couch creaked, and I planned ahead, the idea firm. The line went dead, and I ended, the plan a start. Things with my friend started feeling different, and I noticed it. I was at home that morning, thinking about her advice, and it hit me. She's more than just a buddy. I shook my head, muttering, that's new, the tension easing. I added, take it slow, feeling steady. The living room was quiet, and I felt okay, the windows showing the yard. The clock hit 9 o'clock, and I stayed focused, doubt fading. I grabbed my phone, and I kept calm, wondering what's next. The screen lit up, and I moved on, the plan forming. I asked her out. That afternoon, I called her, saying, hey, want to grab coffee? She paused and said, sure, sounds good, her voice light. I thought, she's in, the relief growing. I added, keep it casual, the tension holding. The kitchen was warm, and I felt steady, the windows showing the street. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I kept quiet, truth sinking in. I jotted a note, and I stayed focused, doubt turned to curiosity. The pen scratched, and I planned ahead, the idea taking shape. The call ended, and I moved on, resolve building. We hit it off. That evening, we sat at a cafe, and she said, nice to get out, smiling. I nodded, yeah, been a while, and we talked about old times. She laughed. You're easy to be around than I thought. And I replied, same here. I thought, this feels right, the satisfaction picking up. I added, enjoy it, the tension easing. The place was busy, and I felt okay, the windows showing people passing. The clock showed 7 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth clear. I stirred my coffee, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The cup sat down, and I moved on, suspicion fading. The chair creaked, and I planned ahead, the plan unfolding. A connection grew. That night we kept chatting, and she said, "You seem different lately." I shrugged, "Maybe I am." And she smiled, "Good different." I thought, she gets me, the relief firm. I added, "See where this goes." The tension building. The car was quiet on the drive back, and I felt steady, the windows showing the city. The clock at 10 o'clock, and I kept quiet, truth a guide. I turned the wheel, and I stayed focused, doubt of memory. The engine hummed, and I moved on, suspicion replaced by hope. The radio played low, and I planned ahead, the idea growing. The lights flashed, and I felt determined. I felt peace again. The next morning, I sat with coffee, thinking about last night, and it hit me. Haven't felt this calm in ages. Her laugh echoed in my head, and I muttered, "This is nice." The satisfaction rising. I added, "Keep it up," the tension easing. The kitchen was bright, and I felt okay. The windows showing the street, the clock at 8 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth settling in. I took a sip, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The cup rested, and I moved on, suspicion past. The chair shifted, and I planned ahead, the plan taking shape. The sun came in, and I felt resolved. We talked more. That afternoon, she texted, "Had fun yesterday." And I replied, "Me too. Let's do it again." She said, "Deal." And I thought, she's on board. The relief growing, I added, "Build on this," the tension holding. The living room was quiet, and I felt steady, the windows showing the yard. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I stayed focused, true to path. I typed back, and I kept calm, doubt of memory. The phone buzzed, and I moved on, suspicion fading. The couch creaked, and I planned ahead, the idea firm. The message sent, and I ended, the plan a start. I couldn't shake the urge to see what she's up to. I was at home that morning, sipping coffee, thinking, gotta know what she's doing. I grabbed my phone, muttering, "Just a look," the tension rising. I added, "Stay smart," feeling uneasy. The kitchen was quiet, and I felt okay, the windows showing the yard. The clock hit 9 o'clock, and I stayed focused, doubt creeping back. I opened the app, and I kept calm, wondering what's next. The screen loaded, and I moved on, the plan forming. I talked to my friend. That afternoon, I called her, saying, "I'm thinking of checking on my wife." She cut in, "Don't get involved directly, just watch from a distance." I asked, "You sure?" And she replied, "Yeah, it's safer." I thought, makes sense, the relief growing. I added, "Follow her lead," the tension holding. The living room was warm, and I felt steady, the windows showing the street. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I kept quiet, truth getting closer. I noted it down, and I stayed focused, doubt turning to action. The pen moved, and I planned ahead, the idea taking shape. The call ended, and I moved on, resolve building. I started looking. That evening, I scrolled through social media, thinking, let's see. I found her profile, and she posted vacation photos, smiling big. I muttered, "Where's she at?" the suspicion picking up. I added, "Something's off," the tension easing. The couch was quiet, and I felt okay, the windows showing the night. The clock showed 7 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth sinking in. I zoomed in, and I kept calm, doubt fading. The screen refreshed, and I moved on, suspicion clear. The phone buzzed, and I planned ahead, the plan unfolding. The light stayed on, and I felt determined. The hints showed up. That night, I kept scrolling, and she'd added captions like, "Great company," the guy in the background. I thought, that's him, the anger rising. I muttered, "Can't believe it," the relief faint. I added, "Got proof," the tension building. The bed was quiet, and I felt steady, the windows showing the city. The clock hit 10 o'clock, and I kept quiet, truth a guide. I saved the post, and I stayed focused, doubt gone. The phone sat down, and I moved on, suspicion solid. The charger clicked, and I planned ahead, the idea growing. The room darkened, and I felt resolved. I kept watching. The next morning, I checked again, thinking, more to see. She'd posted another pic, him closer, and I said to myself, no doubt now. She captioned, "Living my best," and I muttered, with him, the shock hitting. I added, "Stay cool," the tension holding. The kitchen was bright, and I felt okay. The the window showing the street, the clock at 8 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth clear. I took a sip, and I kept calm, doubt of memory. The cup rested, and I moved on, suspicion of fact. The chair shifted, and I planned ahead, the plan taking shape. The sun came in, and I felt steady. My friend was right. That afternoon, I texted her, found her post, Sky with her. She replied, told you, keep watching. I said, yeah, you nailed it, and she added, stay out of it. I thought, she knows her stuff. The relief growing. I added, next move, the tension easing. The living room was quiet, and I felt steady, the window showing the yard. The clock at 2 o'clock, and I stayed focused, true the path. The phone buzzed, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The message sent, and I moved on, suspicion driving me. The couch creaked, and I planned ahead, the idea firm. The screen dimmed, and I ended, the plan a start. I noticed I wasn't missing her like I thought I would. I was at home that morning, drinking coffee, thinking she's gone and I'm fine. I checked my phone, no urge to call, and muttered, that's weird. The tension easing. I added, moving on, feeling steady. The kitchen was quiet, and I felt okay. The window showing the yard. The clock at 9 o'clock, and I stayed focused, doubt fading. I set the cup down, and I kept calm, wondering what's next. The table held steady, and I moved on, the plan forming. I enjoy my friend's company. That afternoon, I met her for a walk, and she said, how you holding up? I replied, better than I thought, and she nodded. Good. She added, I'm here if you need me. No judgment in her voice. I thought, she's solid, the relief growing. I added, keep this up, the tension holding. The park was busy, and I felt okay. The window showing trees from the car later. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I kept quiet, truth sinking in. I stepped along, and I stayed focused. Doubt turned to trust. The path crunched, and I planned ahead, the idea taking shape. The breeze blew, and I moved on, resolve building. She didn't weigh on me. That evening, we grabbed dinner, and she asked, still thinking about her? I shook my head, not really, and she said, that's progress. I thought, feels lighter, the satisfaction picking up. I added, focus on now, the tension easing. The restaurant was warm, and I felt steady, the window showing the street. The clock showed 7 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth clear. I took a bite, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The fork rested, and I moved on, suspicion fading. The bill came, and I planned ahead, the plan unfolding. The chair scraped, and I felt determined. I started planning an end. That night, I sat on the couch, mind working, thinking, time to finish this. Her post flashed back, and I muttered, done with her, the anger rising. I added, make it final, the tension building. The living room was quiet, and I felt okay, the window showing the night. The clock hit 10 o'clock, and I kept quiet, true the guide. I tapped my knee, and I stayed focused, doubt of memory. The phone sat there, and I moved on, suspicion driving me. The cushion shifted, and I planned ahead, the idea growing. The light stayed on, and I felt resolved. The shift felt real. The next morning, I had coffee, thinking, she's not my problem. The break stretched on, and I muttered, good riddance, the relief firm. I added, next step, the tension holding. The kitchen was bright, and I felt steady, the window showing the street. The clock hit 8 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth settling. I sipped the drink, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The cup sat down, and I moved on, suspicion past. The chair creaked, and I planned ahead, the plan taking shape. The sun came in, and I felt okay. I talked it out with her. That afternoon, I called my friend, saying, I'm over her. She replied, that's big, and I nodded, yeah, thinking of ending it. She said, go for it, I'll back you, and I thought, she's with me. The relief growing, I added, plan it right, the tension easing. The living room was quiet, and I felt steady, the window showing the yard. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I stayed focused, true the path. The phone rested, and I kept calm, doubt of memory. The call ended, and I moved on, suspicion fading. The couch creaked, and I planned ahead, the idea firm. The line went dead, and I ended, the plan a start. 2 weeks passed, and she finally reached out. I was at home that morning, checking my phone, thinking, wonder if she'll call. A text popped up. I've thought it over, let's meet, and I read it muttering, Here we go, the tension rising. I added, make it count, feeling steady. The kitchen was quiet, and I felt okay. The windows showing the yard. The clock at 9 o'clock, and I stayed focused, doubt creeping back. I typed back, and I kept calm, wondering what's next. The screen lit up, and I moved on, the plan forming. I agreed to meet. That afternoon, I replied, okay, let's talk, thinking, this is it. She texted cafe at 3, and I said, works for me, keeping it short. I thought, time to end it, the relief growing. I added, stay firm, the tension holding. The living room was warm, and I felt steady, the windows showing the street. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I kept quiet, truth getting close. I grabbed my jacket, and I stayed focused, doubt turning to resolve. The zipper pulled, and I planned ahead, the idea taking shape. The door opened, and I moved on, determination building. I decided it's the end. That evening, driving to cafe, I thought, this settles it. Her message replayed, and I muttered, she thinks we're fixing things. The suspicion picking up. I added, not happening, the tension easing. The car was quiet, and I felt okay, the windows showing the city. The clock showed 2:30, and I stayed focused, truth clear. I turned the wheel, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The engine hummed, and I moved on, suspicion solid. The parking lot neared, and I planned ahead, the plan unfolding. The brake clicked, and I felt resolved. We met at the cafe. That moment, I walked in, saw her at a table, and she waved. Hey, good to see you. I sat down, saying, yeah, let's get to it, keeping my tone flat. She smiled, I've missed this, and I thought, she's clueless, the anger rising. I added, hold steady, the tension building. The place was busy, and I felt steady, the windows showing people outside. The clock hit 3 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth a step away. I set my phone down, and I kept calm, doubt a memory. The chair creaked, and I moved on, suspicion driving me. The menu sat there, and I planned ahead, the idea firm. The waiter passed, and I felt determined. She seemed hopeful. That afternoon, she leaned in, saying, I've thought a lot. I want us back. I listened, thinking, not a chance, and muttered, we'll see, the relief faint. I added, set it up, the tension holding. The cafe was warm, and I felt okay, the windows showing the street. The clock hit 3:15, and I stayed focused, truth close. I stirred my coffee, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The spoon rested, and I moved on, suspicion clear. The cup sat down, and I planned ahead, the plan taking shape. The noise faded, and I felt steady. I prepared my move. That night, driving home, I thought, she's done. The meeting stuck with me, and I muttered, time to act. The satisfaction rising. I added, finish it, the tension easing. The car was quiet, and I felt okay, the windows showing the city. The clock hit 6 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth a path. I turned the key, and I kept calm, doubt a past. The engine stopped, and I moved on, suspicion a fact. The garage door shut, and I planned ahead, the idea growing. The light switched on, and I ended, the plan a start. The cafe meeting was the big one, and I knew it. I walked in that afternoon, spotting her at the table, thinking, this is it. She stood up, hugged me, saying, I've missed you, I want to come home, with a big smile. I pulled back, muttering, not so fast, the tension rising. I added, stay firm, feeling steady. The place was busy, and I felt okay, the windows showing people outside. The clock at 3 o'clock, and I stayed focused, doubt gone. I sat down, and I kept calm, wondering what's next. The chair creaked, and I moved on, the plan forming. She kept going. She leaned in, saying, I've thought it over, I need you, her voice soft. I nodded, thinking, she's got no clue, and muttered, okay, let's talk. She added, I want us back, and I thought, not happening. The relief growing. I added, get ready, the tension holding. The table was steady, and I felt okay, the windows showing the street. The clock hit 3:15, and I kept quiet, truth close. I stirred my coffee, and I stayed focused, suspicion solid. The spoon rested, and I planned ahead, the idea taking shape. The cup sat down, and I moved on, resolve building. I said no. That moment, I looked at her, saying, no, it's not happening. She blinked. What? Her voice shaky. I thought, here it comes, and muttered, Time to end it. The satisfaction picking up. I added, be clear, the tension easing. The cafe was warm, and I felt steady, the windows showing cars passing. The clock hit 3:30, and I stayed focused, truth a step away. I leaned back, and I kept calm, doubt of memory. The napkin folded, and I moved on, suspicion driving me. The table held, and I planned ahead, the plan unfolding. The noise faded, and I felt determined. She was shocked. She stared, saying, "You can't mean that," her hands trembling. I shook my head, I do, and thought, she's lost it. She asked, why? And I replied, you broke it. I muttered, enough is enough, the relief firm. I added, finish this, the tension building. The seat creaked, and I felt okay, the window showing the sidewalk. The clock hit 3:45, and I kept quiet, truth clear. I crossed my arms, and I stayed focused, doubt gone. The cup cooled, and I moved on, suspicion of fact. The chair shifted, and I planned ahead, the idea growing. The air thickened, and I felt resolved. I dropped the bomb. That evening, I said, I've filed for divorce. It's over. She gasped, what did you say? Her face pale. I nodded. It's done. Thinking, no turning back. I muttered. She needed to hear it, the anger rising. I added, move on, the tension easing. The car was quiet on the way home, and I felt steady, the windows showing the city. The clock hit 6 o'clock, and I stayed focused, true to path. I turned the wheel, and I kept calm, doubt past. The engine hummed, and I moved on, suspicion clear. The parking lot neared, and I planned ahead, the plan taking shape. The brake clicked, and I felt okay. She tried to argue. That night, she texted, we can fix this, and I read it, thinking, too late. I replied, no, it's final, and muttered, done dealing. The satisfaction deep. I added, let it go, the tension holding. The living room was quiet, and I felt steady, the windows showing the night. The clock hit 9 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth settled. I set the phone down, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The screen dimmed, and I moved on, suspicion of memory. The couch creaked, and I planned ahead, the idea firm. The lights switched off, and I ended, the plan to start. I walked out of that cafe and left her speechless. I was on the street that afternoon, heading to my car, thinking, she's still sitting there. I glanced back, muttering, done with that, the tension easing. I added, move forward, feeling steady. The sidewalk was busy, and I felt okay, the windows showing the city later. The clock hit 4 o'clock, and I stayed focused, doubt gone. I opened the door, and I kept calm, wondering what's next. The seat creaked, and I moved on, the plan forming. I met my friend. That evening, I stopped by her place, saying, thanks for being straight with me. She smiled, you did the right thing, and I nodded, yeah, it's over. She added, glad you're okay, and I thought, she's been a rock, the relief growing. I added, appreciate it, the tension holding. Her living room was quiet, and I felt steady, the windows showing the night. The clock showed 7 o'clock, and I kept quiet, truth clear. I sat down, and I stayed focused, suspicion of memory. The couch shifted, and I planned ahead, the idea taking shape. The door stayed open, and I moved on, resolve building. She was stunned back there. That night, driving home, I thought, her face said it all. The divorce news hit her hard, and I muttered, no going back, the satisfaction picking up. I added, let her deal, the tension easing. The car was quiet, and I felt okay, the windows showing the street. The clock hit 9 o'clock, and I stayed focused, true to guide. I turned the wheel, and I kept calm, doubt past. The engine hummed, and I moved on, suspicion gone. The garage neared, and I planned ahead, the idea growing. The brake clicked, and I felt determined. I thanked her again. The next morning, I called my friend, saying, really owe you for this. She laughed, just glad you're out, and I replied, me too. I thought, she saw it first, the relief firm. I added, new start, the tension holding. The kitchen was bright, and I felt steady, the windows showing the yard. The clock hit 8 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth settled. I took a sip, and I kept calm, doubt of memory. The cup sat down, and I moved on, suspicion faded. The chair creaked, and I planned ahead, the plan taking shape. The sun came in, and I felt okay. I felt the shift. That afternoon, I sat on the couch, thinking, life's different now. The weight was off, and I muttered, better this way. The satisfaction rising. I added, keep going, the tension easing. The living room was quiet, and I felt steady, the windows showing the street. The clock hit 2 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth a path. I tapped my knee, and I kept calm, doubt gone. The phone buzzed, and I moved on, suspicion a past. The cushion shifted, and I planned ahead, the idea firm. The light stayed on, and I felt resolved. The lesson hit me. That evening, I stood by the window, thinking, sometimes betrayal opens doors to something better. The past faded, and I muttered, true that, the relief deep. I added, look ahead, the tension gone. The house was warm, and I felt okay, the windows showing the night. The clock showed 8 o'clock, and I stayed focused, truth my guide. I turned away, and I kept calm, doubt a memory. The floor creaked, and I moved on, suspicion a lesson. The door stayed shut, and I ended the plan a new beginning.